I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Life advice, rr@gmail.com. We may be taking a break from guys that don't know how to ask girls out. Feel free to keep sending them in, but there's a lot. And I don't pretend to have it, mapped out perfectly either, So, like I said, though, a lot of times the decision's already been made for you, and it doesn't have a ton to do with what you're going to say. So there you go. Sorry if that bums you out. Okay, here we go. Don't use any real names, even name drop the schools. All right. So, okay, there's a nickname here. Here we go. Love the podcast, 3363, 225, down from 275 in January. How about that? The issue I'm seeking advice for is a perpetual problem going all the way back to high school. There are about 6 of us from our friends group that have stayed friends and in contact with one another since high school. As it happens, most of us have moved away to various parts of the state and country, so hangouts are few and far between, but we still talk on the phone, play fantasy football together, etc. One of the members of the group, who we now refer to as Bigfoot when he's not part of the communication, is a compulsive liar and has been for over 15 years now. All right, so if they're 33, 15 years, we're talking half your life here. So we're going back to high school days. One guy in the group is a compulsive liar. The first occasion that any of us can remember was the summer between our junior and senior year of high school. Bigfoot seemingly disappeared that summer. No one saw or heard from him until we all showed up for two-a-days leading into the football season. This is before the days of smartphones and mass social media. When asked where he was all summer, he told us he'd been recruited by the Marines and spent the summer at the Pentagon.
Nice.
I love fucking Bigfoot, man. I love this kid. Because we had a close friend in college that was like, yeah, I'm thinking about being a fighter pilot. We're like, what are you talking about? We're at Vermont. And then he actually said he was fucking flying Top Gun planes and stuff. And then, we were all getting hazed as pledges, and he brought it up. And the older guys, again, as I've pointed out numerous times in this podcast, I'll never stop saying it. The difference between when you're 18 and a guy's 21 or 22 and you're a freshman and he's a senior, that's like being 25 or 45. Okay. It really is. The age gap numbers isn't that big, but it just is. And when the guys found out that he was basically saying, I'm a fighter pilot in training, and they're like, what are you doing here pledging at Vermont? Like, shouldn't you be doing something else? He's like, oh, it's a tough decision, sir. They were like, one guy goes, what's your call sign? And he had one. He was like, Big Pen, brother, sir. So he actually he said his call sign was the Grateful Dead's keyboardist, a piano player, whatever. And then they were like, wait, what? And they were like, what's on your helmet? And he was like, a steal your face, brother, sir. And they were like, so you're the deadhead fighter pilot and you're just hanging out here on campus in Vermont? So we still laugh about this story quite often. All right. So back to the email. We're all kind of taken back. Summer at the Pentagon. Got it. Well, when questioned about it, he said the rest was classified. After asking around for a few days, I found out Bigfoot had really been working at a typical high school summer job in a warehouse. Nobody ever pressed him about it because it didn't directly affect any of us. It did become a running joke for the rest of the group. As the years have gone on, the lies have become stranger and stranger. Bigfoot is a high school football coach, wide receiver coach. We're going to leave out some of the details here, but he'll text the group about getting calls in the middle of the night from Tom Herman and Nick Saban asking for advice about upcoming game plans. This is the guy. This is the guy behind the guy. I hope Nick Saban gets asked about this in a press conference. There's a guy, he's like early 30s, high school coach. What does he help you guys do? What would he say about the offensive line right now? All right. He's told us that he's even been asked to speak to, I will say, a major Power 5 program, to the team in the locker room before a game to pump them up. Obviously, we have no way to verify that this is false. I'm going to go ahead and verify for you that it's false. But context clues tell us that if Bigfoot had these kinds of connections, he wouldn't be a position coach in high school. Finally, I received a call the other day from Bigfoot. We began talking about sports that we played together in high school. He made several false claims about how he was called up to the varsity track team as a freshman to run the 2 mile and several of the relays. Wait, he was a freshman called up to varsity to run 2 mile and also the 4x100 and 4x200? That doesn't make any sense at all. Nobody who runs the 2 mile runs the 100. I ran track for a year, hated it, and I ran the 2 mile. And the only thing that made it better was I was like, can I just switch to the mile? This was striking for 2 reasons. One, Bigfoot was an average athlete at best, and never even sniffed varsity track throughout all of high school, much less a freshman. And 2, all caps, I was there. I obviously know that's not true. This was the first lie that Bigfoot had ever told me that was verifiably untrue. I called the rest of the group to report this claim, and it was met with the collective, what the fuck, but comical. Throughout the years, there have been plenty more instances of half-truths and whole lies, but now I think you get the point. So what should the rest of the group do? If anything, if we call him out of the bullshit, we will feel a few minutes of gotcha justice, but he'll probably disconnect himself from the group. On the other hand, the lies aren't hurting anybody and are good for an occasional laugh. Any perspective, keep up the good work. I love the tone of this email. I love where our emailer is coming from because I think you answered your own question here. I would continue to use Bigfoot's lies as a source of entertainment for everybody else for the rest of your lives. Don't stop this. Encourage it and all be entertained by it. And you could say, well, that's kind of fucked up. Yeah, it is. But you know what's fucked up? Telling people you were at the Pentagon all summer when you're in high school. All right. And then not getting whatever that is out of your system. Certainly people that listen to this podcast that are doctors looking at, I'm sure, feel free to fire off a few. lifeadvicerr@gmail. The root of why somebody becomes a compulsive liar like this, making up completely ridiculous stories. There's one thing that have, if you have a few pops, you start veering off to exaggeration street as you're holding court and you're the alpha in the group, you're telling these stories and all that stuff. Look, that shit happens. But when you start saying, I'm in the Pentagon, can't tell you about it though, rest is classified, and you still have that not in your teens, but in your 30s, there's something else going on there. And I don't know what triggers it. I don't know what insecurity it is. I don't know what it is about parenting. I don't know if it's a trauma-based thing. I'm sure there's a million different ways that people could all dispute or agree on what the root cause of all this is. But if he's totally comfortable telling you that Nick Saban calls him in the middle of the night, you are totally comfortable talking shit about him behind his back to the rest of your friends for the foreseeable future because it's funny as hell. I was entertained by the email just the same way when I tell you about a guy that we pledged with who was arguing that he was actually a fighter pilot in his spare time, but had a very difficult decision to make at UVM, whether or not to become a sophomore or defend our borders. We are still allowed to laugh about it 20 plus years later.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a part of it that's a little disgusting, where you're just like, God, he's like in our circle, and he's doing this thing that we all know about, and it sounds like, yeah, if the decision isn't that anybody's really upset enough by this to bring it up and then potentially lose the guy or then have a weird thing, I would just say maybe you guys should start taking turns making up some wild shit that everybody else in the non Bigfoot group chat knows about and see what he does. Like, is he gonna, maybe you went base jumping with Tom Cruise. I don't know. But like, I think that's probably the best way to just look at everyone looks at his face while while you guys come up with the best ridiculous lie and see if he's like going to call anyone out. Cause that would just be hilarious too. But yeah, it's just, have fun with it at this point. There's a little bit of it as like, damn it, why is one of our good friends lying to us with regularity? But it seems like everyone's okay with it. You guys probably have your own lives at this point, so it's not like you're hanging out every minute of the day anyway.
Well, what I'd like to know is like how successful are the other guys in the friend group? Because maybe he's, trying to overcompensate because he's not super pumped about being a wide receiver coach in high school, which there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe he's just like, hey, I'm just trying to make myself look more impressive to my friends. I completely agree with you guys. I think you guys are actually lucky that he's in your friend group because you have this source of entertainment. I would not do anything to mess with that. I mean, and here's the thing, it's not hurting anybody, right? He's probably not impacting your life, negatively because he's telling these lies. He's probably just trying to make himself feel better. So I don't think there's any point in calling him out for it unless he's doing something shitty to you or one of your friends. So I think you just sit back, enjoy it, and let him kind of feel the way he wants to feel.
You know what else I like about this is another lesson in this email, and that is, the stuff that you can spend time letting it bother you. And, for all of us, we could all do a much better job of going, hey, this thing that's bothering you, does it really matter? Does it really matter? Is it going to change anything? And if it isn't, even if the person's wrong in what they're doing, if it really isn't going to directly affect you all that much, because there's other people that would send in this email being like, hey, it's driving me crazy. I want to call this guy out. It's totally bullshit. And I would also understand that person having that perspective. But what I like about this emailer is that he's pointing it out as a story, but he's not pointing it out in this way that's like, I've spent all this time thinking about it and letting it bother me and all this different shit. When you're like, at the end of the day, why would you actually you can not like it. You can be right. He can be wrong, but let's all try to identify those things that bother us, that take up our energy, that really mean nothing, because there's a long list of stuff like that.
It'd be one thing too if it was like your situation, Ryan, where you're in college and this kid is saying that he's like a fighter pilot, and all of a sudden he's getting all these girls, and he's like kind of screwing your guy's situation up, and you guys are like, well, fuck this dude. I know this is all a lie. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. Like, he's just doing this in what seems like probably his hometown. He said all these guys don't really live around each other anymore. So it probably doesn't impact you other than your group chat. And it's a source of entertainment. There's no reason to worry about it.
Yeah, that call signal stuff was all timer. Because we were like,
did anyone believe it? Did anyone buy it? Because otherwise, I mean, man.
No, the thing is, you're so naive and gullible, honestly, at 18. So your capacity for believing things is greater because you just haven't been around as much. And for me too, I'd even have moments as the oldest of 5. Like, I still would always rather have been the oldest for whatever lessons I learned being the oldest and being protective and maybe a little bit more caring, because you had to care about, younger siblings. But I also at times would be like, man, it would have been great to have an older brother who'd been like through the wars 5 years ahead of me, who was like, hey, look, this is kind of how life works. And so I think when I was 18, I was kind of a young 18 for some things, but I also could be mature in others, which, again, doesn't make a ton of sense. But the point of it all is that even all of us at 18, you've been on campus a couple weeks, now all of a sudden you're in Vermont and you're freezing your ass off and you're in a basement and all these dudes with real facial hair are yelling at you, even though you're not quite sure what the hell's going on. And then we had to say something about ourselves during this first night of being pledges, or it was like the second night, because the first night something super fucked up happened. But the second night, and I'm like, I'm writing, hey, from Martha's Vineyard, like basketball, like whatever. You don't know, because no matter what you write, it's going to be the wrong thing, which is the whole point. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to write anything. The older guys would be like, hey, yell at him less. I really like how he described himself in a paragraph or less. And this guy actually was in. We're all like facing a wall. We're all getting yelled at, and you're sitting there, and the rest of us at 18 as pledges are looking at each other kind of side-eye, cringing every time he had answered something about being a fighter pilot. Like, we couldn't fucking believe it. And then we would be at lunch the next day, and guys would be like, what do you think was going on with that, with the fighter pilot thing? And there was not like one guy. And the thing is, people actually kind of liked the guy too at first. He had a lot of Russell Wilson in him, I'll tell you that. And now maybe that's why I don't like Russell Wilson's personality. Maybe I just figured it out, connected it all together. And guys are like, yeah, what's he doing there? And it's just all these older guys, they weren't even mad. It was so preposterous. They were laughing at us they were laughing at him so hard. And then other guys were trying to not laugh at him, even though you're scared. You don't really know what's going on because you're so young. And there's this massive shift of like, hey, I was on the vineyard on a beach 3 weeks ago. Like, what the hell is this? To have this moment where you're that young and you don't believe the other guy that's your peer. And then all these older dudes are screaming at him, making fun of him. And again, they weren't even mad because it was so stupid. It was such a ridiculous lie. They weren't even mad, but they couldn't stop talking about it. And we still talk about it now. And that was in the fall of 1993. All right. Okay, last life advice here. What's up, 5'5", 176-pack? Yeah. So last Sunday, my wife and I were at one of her friends' houses to watch football. There's about 5 girls in the group, and all their husbands' boyfriends are all chill dudes. So we're looking at what, party of 12 here, except this new guy, apparently. We all drank, had a good time. Then 2 days later, I'm told I need to apologize to this dude because I said something that hurt his feelings. I had to be reminded of what I said because it wasn't really a memorable conversation, maybe 3 minutes of a 5-hour party. So what happened was he said, Rodgers, all athletes are all overpaid. I said, he's top 5 in the world at what he does, meaning Rodgers. The world. You're not even a top 5 nurse. He's a nurse. Greg, RN. So our guy here emailing told this guy after he said Rogers was overpaid that he's like, hey, you're not even a top 5 nurse at your hospital. There are 3 hospitals in our town alone. So if anything, you might be the one overpaid. That's pretty harsh if you don't know this guy. Other people chimed in talking shit to each other, and the conversation went on to something else. Cut to last Tuesday. I apparently hurt this clown's feelings. This guy's pretty
Super
sensitive.
remorseful.
Yeah, this guy's really wants to apologize. Apparently, I hurt this clown's feelings. Should I, A, Chris Traeger to Ann style my fondness of nurses and say they all deserve $1 million apology style? B, dig in and half apologize while talking shit. C, tell the dude to fuck off. D, just ignore it. I would usually just ignore it and hope the next time we see each other it's in the past. But we have a birthday dinner thing next Saturday with that group. On a side note, my wife thinks it's funny and I think secretly wants me to apologize for her own amusement. This guy doesn't sound like he's much on apologies to begin with. Now's not the time to be saying that nurses are overpaid. So nobody wants to hear that right now. Now, look, I will admit, I don't know how popular it's going to be with some of our educational listeners, but whether it's the duty, the task itself can be incredibly hard. It can be incredibly important, but market sets market. And if you are doing something that separates you from someone else, then you're just going to be worth more. All right. We already understand that stuff. So I would say, like, in my 20s, pursuing a teacher, I don't know what grade it was, whatever. And she was, talking, and I'm like, oh, you're a teacher. That's great. You're like, oh, you're so underpaid. You just, what you do, you're molding like the next generation. I could have also said, like, I don't know if you guys are underpaid. Like, you take 3-4 months off, it's not like, you have to go to school and you have to get certified, but like, there's still a lot of teachers. And again, right now, selfishly, a teacher is listening to this, getting mad at me about saying this, but that's not the point. It's not even specific to teachers. It's not specific to nurses. It is the starting point of number of people that are eligible to do something like this. And it's no different. Like, yes, there's harder work than what most of us all do and what laborers do, but like, you get it. All right. So I shouldn't have to explain this to anybody. So my point is pointing that shit out isn't ever a good idea. I wouldn't sit there and pursue a teacher and go, yeah, you get a huge vacation though. Like, if she says, because you imagine how tough it is to be a teacher. Okay. Now the problem is for teachers that there are a lot of them. But if you were to talk to a teacher in a social gathering, you don't tell them, I don't really have any sympathy. Yeah, what do you get? You guys get spring break too? And then there's a March one, and then, June, snow days. Like, come on. So don't say that to the nurse. I don't know, though. The apology part, I don't think you're going to be, you might be better off not apologizing, considering the way you mapped out your options. I think you're going to do more damage to the relationship just based on your mindset here than you would by just fake apologizing here. So when you said dig in, half apologize while talking shit, I would just not talk to him. If you actually presented that as an option for you, I don't think you're really wired to even pretend you're sorry for this one. Kyle?
Yeah, that's good. It felt like it was leaning towards like a Curb episode thing where like Larry's right, but he said it in the wrong way. But also, I mean, I've been there, and what I would say is maybe it was your tone. Did this guy say he was drunk, or?
No, he didn't. He didn't ever say. Well, I think they were having a good time.
I didn't feel I was drunk when I've offended people either, and it was just sort of like, and I've just been told like, hey, like, that guy wasn't really happy about that. I was like, what are you talking about? We were just talking. He's like, yeah, but Kyle, the way you said it, like, you sounded like an asshole. And I was like, really? I thought we were just talking. But yeah, I wouldn't apologize. I would just say nothing. If your heart's not in it, and then because then you're going to have to bring it up.
It doesn't seem like anyone's forcing you to do it, right? It doesn't seem like, if the wife is not making you do it, who is making you do it? Like peer pressure? I don't know. It doesn't feel like the two of those guys are going to be friendly. So who cares? Like, just, unless if your wife or girlfriend was saying, oh, you need to do this because it's, you embarrassed me or something. All right, you take one for the team and do it. If she thinks it's a joke, who cares? Yeah. I mean, I'm not sitting here saying I don't think either party is right in the situation. The guy like kind of sounded like he was too aggressive, and the nurse guy was probably too easily offended, but it doesn't sound like you guys are going to get along, even if there's an apology or not.
I would just let it rock. Unless it turns out that you were actually a little bit of a drunk asshole in like a couple other facets of the night, and then it sort of just came out there in like an aggressive way. But yeah, if that's not the case, then you can't take a long hard look at yourself and just said I had a few too many and maybe I was getting a little salty, then yeah, I would just let it go.
Yep, I think that nails it. All right, that'll do it for today's podcast. We'll be back on Friday. Thanks to Kyle and Steve, and please subscribe. Ring with the Spotify.